The Newsvendor model, managerial insights. Let's now discuss some managerial insights that we learn from the Newsvendor model. And the first set of points will be related to forecasting. So the most important point here is that 1 point demand forecast is insufficient, right? So the forecast that we got from marketing department that they expect to sell 3,200 units is not enough. We also need some kind of measure of variability of the demand. So it's a good idea to construct a distribution for the demand forecast, right? So for example, have normal distribution and use this right. This for normal distribution with given mean and standard deviation is giving us much more information and decision power. Another point is it's very important to keep track of actual demand. And the critical point is to realize demand is not the same as unit sales. So, for example, if I order 1,000 units and my unit sales are 500, then I know this actually was the demand because I had higher quantity, right? But if I actually had a stock out, right? So, for example, if I order 1,000 units and my sales are also 1,000, what is the demand? Well, demand could be 1,000, but it could be much higher than 1,000 because maybe I experienced a stock out. So if stock out occurs, right, then actual demand may be much higher than the unit sales, right? And the problem is that the actual demand may be hard to observe, right? If you cannot observe it, you should attempt a reasonable estimate. For example, if I'm selling over 6 months and I run out of units after 3 months, then maybe a reasonable assumption is that the demand would be 2 times larger than the quantity I had, right? If, however, the stock out occurs just one day before the season ends, then perhaps the actual sales are equal to almost exactly to the demand, right? And the final point about forecasting is that it's important to keep track of past forecasts and forecast errors, right? So we have to keep information about past forecasted value and the actual value in the past, even though it's actually hard to kind of record, keep a log of mistakes, right? Who wants to memorize all the mistakes they did? Oh, I forecasted 1,000 and demand was really 5,000, or the other way around, right? But it's very important because this is the only way we can learn about the quality of our forecasting method, and we can then benefit from it by building new distribution functions for demand forecasts in the future, right? And of course, one should always work on improving forecasting, but if you're using the same method, at least collect data so that you can use information about the quality of the forecast. The second set of insights is about order quantity. So notice that profit maximizing order quantity Q is usually not equal to the expected demand. And typically, if underage cost, or not typically, always, when underage cost is higher than average cost, quantity will be higher than expected demand, right? This was our case. Our underage cost was 80, our average cost was 20, and quantity was 4,000 something when expected demand was just over 3,000, right? If in the other way, if average cost is higher than underage, then the quantity will be less than the expected demand. So maybe if in this case, maybe our quantity would be 2,000 or 1,000 something when expected demand is 3,000. It's also important to realize that explicit cost shouldn't be overemphasized relatively to opportunity cost. And why? Because the underage cost is actually lost opportunity cost, and we should still take care of it, because if you want to maximize profit, you have to also recognize not just the actual cost, right? Explicit cost of overage, like the leftover will cost us, right? In this case, $20, but underage cost is just a lost opportunity cost. It's not a real cost. It's just a decrease in profit that we experience, right? But if you were to overemphasize the overage cost and ignore underage cost, you would actually find a quantity that wouldn't be maximizing your profit, right? And the final thing about the order quantity, right? You have to separate it from forecasting. So, in other words, you don't want to even have a discussion or let the marketing know that we did actually decide to order 4,186 units, because they would say, what is it you're thinking? You don't trust our forecasts. We forecasted 3,200 and you order 4,186. What's wrong with you, right? And then you would have to have a long explanation of, right, basically this whole topic of why it is actually very reasonable to order, uh, right, 4,186. This is the quantity that maximizes the profit, and it is strongly based on the 3,200, but it is also based on our economic inputs, profit, cost, salvage value, and also on the um, known quality of forecasting that we know from past forecasting performance. Some more comments about order quantity. Maximizing expected profit is only one possible objective, right, to choose the order quantity. It is, of course, appropriate when variability of profit is not a major concern. If you have a lot of products, right, for which you try to choose order quantities for each of them, you choose order quantity that maximizes expected profit, right? Then some products you're going to get higher profit, in others you get lower profits, but on average you will get a profit that is equal to almost right the same as the sum of expected profits from those products, right? So this is a good objective. However, if you're a startup company, let's say, and you have just one product and limited resources, then it's probably prudent to order less than the profit maximizing order quantity. And the reason for this is that, well, if you are unlucky and you actually have much lower demand and lots of leftover, the leftover can bankrupt your company, uh, right, if you don't have enough capital to cover, one case of bad luck. So, right, this is the maximizing expected profit is not a good idea for such a company. And of course, expected profit objective does not consider the customer service explicitly. So, as we discussed, we can actually choose order quantity based on desired service level, and right, usually will lower the expected profit, but at least customers might be more satisfied with our decision. So, when we want to achieve a certain service level, one way is, as we said, is to set order quantity based on an in-stock probability, desired in-stock probability, or another is expected fill rate. Of course, this is going to lower the profit. However, fortunately, the profit function, in this case, we have a drawing, a chart of profit function with respect to the in-stock probability that we use to set the order quantity. So notice this was the case when we maximized profit for critical ratio 80%. In stock probability was 80% also, and this is where we had our expected profit maximized. Luckily, if you, for example, decide to go to 90, 95% in stock probability, you're not going to lose a lot of that profit. Only when you go to values that are extremely close to 100% in stock probability, this is where you get a significant drop in the expected profit. And some additional managerial insights. Any action that will reduce demand variability will reduce mismatch cost. And of course, we can measure demand variability using the coefficient of variation, CV, right, which is dividing sigma, this is sigma divided by mu, right? The smaller this coefficient of variation, the better our forecasting ability, right? And any improvement in this forecasting ability will translate into higher profits or lower mismatch cost. Also note that a high critical ratio means there is a large profit margin relatively to per unit loss on excessive inventory, right? This is, for example, common for greeting cards. Greeting cards that you see large numbers of units and a lot of choice, right? Why is that? Well, because if you have something that maybe you can procure for 10 or 20 cents and sell for $5, your profit per unit, right? The underage cost is actually very large compared to the average cost, even if your salvage value is zero. 10 or 20 cents of loss per unit is nothing, is very little compared to a potentially, $4.80 or 90 cents of profit that you make on every greeting card. So that's why you see, stands with greeting cards with a lot of excess inventory. The units that are ordered are much larger, right? Much larger quantities are ordered than the expected demand. On the other hand, if you have low critical ratios, right, you will often order much less than the expected demand. And this, an example could be some perishable products, for example, fresh vegetables. A lot of small stores that sell fresh vegetables will procure daily quantities that are much smaller than the expected demand, and often in the afternoon and the evening, they would have sold most of the products. And the reason for this is, of course, that if they keep anything till the end of the day, the vegetables become rotten and then cannot be sold at all. In which case, all the value is lost. Salvage value might be zero or very tiny compared to the cost, when the unit profit is actually much smaller than the average cost in this case. And the final comment is just that it is difficult to use this model, this Newsvendor model, collect all the information, build the demand forecast. Doesn't mean we should just make ad hoc decisions and set order quantities using a gut feeling. It is still, better to come up with some reasonable numbers and use the models and get, set order quantities that will at least roughly maximize profits or achieve certain service levels than to set them in a way based on intuition or other gut feeling.